Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first FoLA General Meeting for 2023. My apologies about the weather. When we plan these meetings, we can't do much about the weather, can we? One other exciting thing that has happened, and did you bring any books here? You said since that time, a new publication has been released, Aboriginal Land Rights and Self-Determination at Hermannsburg, 1972 to 1982. I had two informal meetings with Pastor Paul Albrecht at Lynn Homes later last year, and he was very keen for this to get off the ground. And there were three principal authors, as himself, Gary Stoll and Greg Marks, and there's other people behind the scenes helping as well. They offered it to FoLA to be a FoLA publication, and so my name is in the front there in the foreword. And in time we got this printed. We had 400 copies printed, and the sales to date have been amazing. And so we're not having an official launch tonight. If it wasn't so hot, we would have invited Pastor Paul Albrecht to come along and speak about it, because he was really very keen to get this done. But he's 90 and the weather's hot out there. But anyhow, you might like to have a look at it afterwards and purchase a copy. They're $15 a copy. And Helen Schubert has got copies here, and it's well worth reading. That's that one. Also, if anybody would like to help with the supper convening, could you let me know or let the Eckermans know? They're happy to sort of keep doing it, but they would appreciate help with it. And if anybody can help on an intermittent basis or a regular basis, please let us know, because we're all volunteers in one way or another. Tonight's meeting is being live streamed. And so we need to let everybody know that, so that you are comfortable with it. And if you're not, there is a legal opportunity for people to leave the meeting. But so welcome to the people watching the live stream as well. And I'm sure we would welcome comments and suggestions from people who watch the live stream, so that we can improve the quality of it if need be. Thank you to those people up in the back desk tonight who are helping with the live streaming. We've advertised for support. We've got a number of people who are prepared to help with it, and we really appreciate the efforts made, because it's not something technology-wise that everybody can handle. So just be conscious then that this is being live streamed, and people from around Australia and around the world can actually watch the proceedings of the meeting if they want to. Now, Lois, just to give you a bit of an update of meetings coming up, do you want to stand there?
Thank you, Jeff. And it's lovely to see this scattering of brave souls who've come out of the heat tonight. The next meeting, we hope, will be a little cooler. It will be in exactly 1 month at this same venue, and the speaker will be Lyle Kupke, former archivist of Lutheran Archives, and he will be speaking on a rather special congregation and community here in South Australia, Bethel, near Kapunda. As I said, a congregation and also a community, a Moravian community, by which we don't mean Moravian as in the nationality that is part of what used to be Czechoslovakia, but Moravian by religious denomination. But there were also other groups who were connected either with the congregation or the community. There were also Wends, Germans, and Cooneyite involved in this whole story, which Lyle has been researching especially. He's taken a special interest in it, and you will find it quite illuminating, I am sure. So that is in exactly 1 month from tonight, our March meeting on the 23rd. And from there, I assume, Jeff, introduce our speaker for tonight. And although, as one always says, she needs no introduction, Bethany has been our reference archivist for a year now. It's a whole year since we had our new team of archivists at Lutheran Archives, and you will have seen and heard her at our meetings. She's been very helpful at many of them. And you may have also found her very cheerful, obliging and helpful as reference archivist down at the archives in Bowden. Bethany, apart from saying she's our archivist, I promised I'd say she's a pastor's kid. And depending on the varieties of that species that you happen to have encountered in your life, it will make a difference to how you see that word. So, Bethany was born in Greensboro when her father, Dr. Stephen Pietsch, Reverend Dr. Stephen Pietsch, was pastor there. So she grew up in Melbourne-ish, and then came to South Australia when Stephen took up a call as a lecturer at Australian Lutheran College, and so she's been living here ever since. That was for her last year of primary school. She was at St John's, then, of course, Concordia College, and then Adelaide University, where she has over a year ago completed an arts degree with honours in history. So her subjects for her matriculation were German, Italian, English, history, and music. And she is quite skilled in all of those. And as I said, her specialisation for her honours arts degree was history, and the history of Germany, the Hansa shipping fleet in Germany in the 16th century. So, quite an erudite topic. So, since that time, Bethany has been, for the last year, Bethany has been with us at Lutheran Archives, and she's been taking charge of all sorts of areas, including notably the German transcriptions and translations. She's in charge of doling them out to our volunteers. But she was particularly excited by this one group of letters that were deposited late last year. The letters in German, 28 of them, most of them in German, a few in English, and she started looking at them, found them absolutely fascinating because of the stories they tell directly from the pens of Germans suffering in the aftermath of the Second World War. As you can imagine, as a historian, she has studied that event, but not seen this kind of document, first-hand document from the people in that land. And that's fascinated her. And she is certainly streaking ahead with her capacity to translate. I must say that although her German is very good, university studies, language studies these days do not teach translation. So it's a new skill that one has to adopt when one needs it. And she's doing so very well among all the other skills she's been picking up. So will you please welcome Bethany Pietsch for our talk tonight.
All right, thanks very much, Lois. That was a very glowing introduction. I should point out, you said I was very skilled in all of my matriculation subjects. I don't remember a word of Italian anymore. I only learned that for 2 years. I remember that one, I suppose. But now, would people at the back desk there be able to swap over to my PowerPoint for tonight? And I'll also just check my clicker works. Not very well at the moment. Do I need to put it this way or closer to the... That's okay. I'll just ask you to change a slide when you need to. That's not a problem. Okay. Well, so good evening, everybody. To give you a little bit of an overview of what I'll talk about tonight, post-war European relief is an absolutely massive story. There were so many Lutheran families and Lutheran organisations in Australia involved in it, as well as national organisations and international ones. So you really could tell this story at just about any level that you chose. And some of you here might well have this story in your background. Perhaps your family sent parcels. Perhaps your family even has similar letters to this collection. But for this talk, I'm really just going to be telling you the story about this particular collection of letters that Lois mentioned. And I'll give you some of the context about the people connected to this story, hopefully unfold things in a way that's somewhat interesting about how they all came to be here in Australia and what that story was. And then I'll get stuck into the letters themselves. I'll read you a lot of excerpts from them, and I'll concentrate on some of the particular stories which I think really bring out the beauty of the Christian love and faith and fellowship that you see throughout, demonstrated throughout this story. And so if you could flick along to the next slide for me there. Wonderful. So this talk basically all came out of a rusty biscuit tin, which was handed to me over the front counter of Lutheran Archives in July last year by a descendant of a Lutheran family called the Millers from country Victoria. As Lois said, it contained 28 letters, which was sent to the Miller family from Germany between 1947 and 1949. You can see in Germany, you can see up on the screen there where they came from in Germany. There's a bit of a spread, but it was mostly around the city of Hanover. That was really the epicenter of it, and about a third of the letters are from there. 3 of them were in English, but the rest were in German, and all of them are in reference to the relief parcels of food and clothing which the Millers sent to about 20 different households in Germany. And to be honest, this talk was basically just an excuse for me to be able to translate them and read them, and then read them out to you. So the first thing I will do is read you the full letter of the one which inspired my title, Dear Sisters in the Faith. So, on the 4th of November in 1947, somewhere in the bombed-out city of Hamburg, a woman called Dorothea Rieken sat down and wrote this letter. Dear Sisters in the Faith, with great joy and most heartfelt thanks did we receive your wonderful, kind parcel. You would not believe how much joy you have brought us with this. It arrived just 3 days before our silver wedding anniversary, so we were able to celebrate the occasion somewhat, and we thought of you with heartfelt affection. The wool is truly wonderful. I shall use it to knit my husband a scarf for the winter. And the beautiful soap, which is so very rare here. For 8 weeks, we get 1/4 pound of soap powder and 1/4 pound of soaking powder per person. And who can make that last? The tins of sausages and tomatoes, what a treat. We lived off that for an entire week. Thank you especially for the coffee, and also for the sewing thread, and the beautiful honey. We will save that for Christmas. May our dear Lord bless you richly for your generosity. The Lord has beset us with hardships. In July 1943, we lost our home and all our belongings. We ended up on the street with 2 suitcases. Then we moved into our son's apartment, and there we were bombed out completely for a second time. Now, through the death of my mother, we've acquired a bed. 1 table and 2 stools is all our wealth. But our faithful God has kept us healthy thus far, and for that we are thankful to him from the bottoms of our hearts. We are very much concerned that we haven't received any news from our son and only child out of Russia since February 1945. May the faithful God grant to us that we will yet hear from him someday. With him, nothing is impossible. We wish you and your dear loved ones a blessed Christmas and New Year, and I am, with most heartfelt greetings from myself and my dear husband, yours in Christ, Dorothea Rieken. So Dorothea's letter has many features in common with the rest of the letters in this collection, and I'll expand on more of those as we go. But the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the word with which she addresses the letter, which I translated as sisters in the faith. In German, the word is Glaubensschwester, and literally, if you can click on to the next thing on the slide there, it means faith sisters. Glaubensbrüder, which you could translate as faith brothers or brothers in the faith, but it's also often used universally to indicate the entire community of fellow Christians, their faith siblings, if you will. So I could have translated this word just as fellow Christians, but I didn't want to lose that beautiful sense of family connection that comes across in the German there. And this word appears in a lot of the letters. It appears all over the place, and that's why it inspired my title. So you might be wondering, who were the dear sisters in the faith who sent this parcel, and what do we know about them? To answer that, we're going to dive into some Women's Guild minutes. If we can go, there we go. So here we are, after church one Sunday, at Warrayure Trinity Church, a congregation in the Tarrington or Hochkirch parish in Victoria. It wasn't, probably, but let's pretend that this photograph was taken on the 3rd of November, 1946, when the Women's Guild gathered after the service for their regular monthly meeting. A woman called Mrs. E.G. Miller moved a successful motion that our next drive be for food parcels for Germany. Mrs. Miller's suggestion was the start of an effort which these ladies, if we can move along, carried on until the middle of 1951. European relief is mentioned in the minutes of every single meeting over that time, and if you count up from their annual reports, they sent a total of 415 parcels over those few years. Already by the 1st of December 1946, the meeting that they had 1 month into this campaign, the Guild reports that they've collected just over £13, which in today's money was close to $1,000. And I'll quickly point out to you, you can't see Mrs. Miller in this photo. She'd retired from the Guild by then. But you can see her youngest daughter, Betty Handreck. There should be a circle to come up if you click on the slide. There she is. And we'll hear more about her as we go. Another important detail to come out of this December meeting is that the Guild resolved to adopt those addresses that we already had for forwarding parcels to Germany. So what does this mean? Whose addresses were these? There are a couple of possible answers to this, which are more applicable, I suppose, to the wider story of war relief in the church. If you look through the ELCA church magazines, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Australia, one of the 2 primary Lutheran synods in Australia at that time, their church paper, the Australian Lutheran, has numerous articles throughout this period about the post-war relief efforts of the wider church. In 1946 and 47, there are several articles particularly explaining the adoption system for donating relief parcels to Europe. The idea was that societies within the church, they specify particularly the ladies and young people's societies, were encouraged to adopt a suffering family or 2 as they had the means and send them regular parcels of food. People could apply for addresses to send their parcels to the Relief Committee of General Synod. We can also find out a bit more about the Victorian context from the Victorian newsletter published in the Australian Lutheran in July 1947. Incidentally, this newsletter was written by W.H. Paik, who was the pastor at the Tarrington Parish and the husband of the Warrayure Women's Guild's founding president, Mrs. W.H. Paik. He writes, "Many relief parcels have been forwarded to Europe. A check-up shows that the Hochkirch and Warrayure congregations have already sent 170 parcels to our brethren of the Free Church, exclusive of a number of parcels also sent by some members." And he goes on to explain that the committee acting on behalf of the district in this matter has some 150 addresses from overseas, and that those who desire further addresses may obtain them by writing to Mr. F.W. Hoffman, Tarrington. However, there is another clue to the addresses adopted specifically by the Warrayure Guild, and there are some passages from a different letter that will start to piece these things together. Hanover Linden, 15th of May, 1947. Dear Laura, an incredibly special occurrence gives me reason to turn to you and your dear godmothers. A few days ago, to our absolute and total surprise, we received a parcel of very, very great value to us. It has moved us deeply to know that there are dear, generous people living so far away who feel for us in our heavy misfortunes and strive with their energetic assistance to ease our great distress. You give us power and strength through your aid, through your generosity, but also through your prayers on our behalf. We no longer feel so helpless, alone, and forsaken. We can feel your great love from across the oceans. We can only thank you and your dear husband from the depths of our hearts for this great thing you have done for us. We still talk about you and remember our wonderful childhood days, often and with great fondness. At the singing festivals with Theo Nicol, your hearty singing always delighted us. Then as children, how we sat beside each other in confidence and you dealt out secret and stolen lollies. It was a wonderful time. Now, over the many years, everything has changed so much. The war with its horrors has transformed our beautiful Hanover to a mound of rubble, all dust and dirt. The once magnificent parks are unkempt or being farmed for vegetables, even in our marsh park. And the many refugees, everybody lives crushed so closely together. And what's the use of strikes? What's the use of protest rallies? The next winter should be still more terrible, much worse, so the newspapers predict. With every distribution of rations, there is less. What it says on the cards simply isn't there. You only get it upon appeal, and then you only get a 3-pound loaf of bread each week, and per month, 200 grams of meat, 300 grams of food provisions, Hart's cheese, 125 grams of butter, 500 grams of sugar, 450 grams of jam. One can go through these scanty rations within a few days, and one must keep house so strictly to ensure that the dear ones still have a morsel to eat by the end of the last week. You should know that doctors and lawyers are digging ditches. Civil servants are shoveling rubble and rocks or what have you, all working for about 65 to 70 pennies an hour. Here or there, people still have a little capital saved up, but for how long? The denazification will soon begin. Hopefully we will soon achieve peace. Thus far, we have always trusted in God's help, and He will not forsake us into the future. There is a shortage of every necessity of life. One frequently has no idea what to do. But even when one thinks it's all over, somehow a little light still emerges. Such was the magnificent parcel from you from so far away. Our great, great joy over all these rare, precious things I cannot express in words. From America, St. Louis, we once received 10 pounds of food in a single month. But the parcel from Australia, from your Tarrington Women's Guild, was the most glorious and loveliest of all. Dripping, real beef dripping, cocoa, milk powder, meat, cheese, all such rare things which we have not seen here in the city for a long, long time. So we want to thank you, dear Laura, and all the other generous donators, we want you to accept our sincerest and most heartfelt thanks. We all wish you and your loved ones all the best and God's richest blessings into the future. For today, heartfelt greetings. Your thankful Hildegard Becker and family, along with Opa Weber. So this was actually the first letter that I translated from the collection, and two things about it caught my attention. The first thing was the mention of Theo Nickel. Some of your ears might have pricked up at the sound of that name. If you haven't heard of him, Dr. Theo Nickel was a German pastor who served for a time in the Elka Synod in Australia and also in the Missouri Synod in America. He also had a son of the same name, Theo Nickel Jr., who was a choir director, who may possibly have been the one meant in the letter. And the second thing that particularly struck me was the fact that the person Hildegard Becker in Hanover was writing to, this Laura, was clearly a childhood friend from Germany, perhaps even a cousin. So at this point, I had better introduce you more properly to the Miller family. You've heard me mention Mrs. E.G. Miller, who presented the original motion to the Ladies' Guild to send the parcels to Germany. You can see her wedding photo here. And you can also see her and her husband sitting in the middle of their family of 10 children in 1939, looking rather a lot more like they would have looked at the time that they were packing these parcels. I also want to draw your attention particularly to two other people in this photograph. The first is a 10-year-old Betty Miller, who you can see there. And the second is standing in that little family group on the far right of the picture, where you can see the Miller's second son, John, his two children, and his German wife, Eleonora Weber, also known as Laura, or more commonly, Lorchen. So I have to credit Marlene Pietsch, who donated the letters to the archives in the first place, for providing me with this particular connection when I sent her an email to ask about it, and also providing me with further information about Laura and with these lovely photographs as well. From Marlene's Miller family history book, we learned that in 1929, the then 23-year-old Eleonora Weber took advantage of an opportunity organised by Theo Nickel for several young German girls to come visit Australia. Here, she met John Miller, and 2 years later, she took him back to Germany to get married in her hometown of Hanover, before returning once again to live in Victoria, where John was a teacher. So this here is the connection. This woman, Lorchen Miller, was the living connection between 21 desperate households in Germany and this community on the other side of the world in country Victoria, in Warrayure and Tarrington. Now, if you were particularly paying attention to the advertised blurbs for my talk, you'd have noticed I mentioned a particular organisation, if we can go ahead to the next slide here, called the Humanitas Occupied Europe Relief Society, which was run by a Lutheran man called W.H. Nichterlein. Yeah. So Marlene Pietsch, the depositor of the letters, originally pointed me towards this organisation. She'd done a little bit of research into them and handed it over to me. And I'd hoped to talk more about this organisation and link them into my main story, but unfortunately I couldn't find that many sources about them. And I couldn't also find too many direct connections to the Warrayure letters, but I don't want to be done for false advertising, so I will tell you what I know about this organisation. And it is indeed one example of the last part of this process. How did the donated goods actually get to the places that they needed to go? And so, this organisation, you can find them throughout the 1940s on Trove, in the Overseas Export Manifests, as you can see some examples back on the previous slide, up there, published in the Commercial Australia newspaper. You can notice that they were involved in exporting both bulk shipments of goods. You can see there 100 bags of rolled oats or 50 cartons of milk powder, but they also seem to have sent parcels overseas, perhaps these same care package relief parcels that were being packed by the women's guilds. So it is possible that they sent some of the parcels, that they helped to transfer the parcels sent by the Warrayure Guild and the Miller family, but if they did, I couldn't find any evidence, I'm afraid. And now if we move on to the next slide here, As far as I can tell, it wasn't a solely Lutheran organisation, but the president, W.H. Nichterlein, was a Lutheran. He was a businessman. According to his obituary, he was one of the original directors of the Nusky Flour Mill in Victoria, and he was also a director of the Australian Cement Company. He was also the brother of a Lutheran pastor, Pastor Otto Nichterlein, and he served on the executive council of the Elker Synod in, I think, the 1950s, but I forgot to double-check where I found those mentions of him in the yearbooks. Apologies. But as you can see in this Horsham Times article there, he was very actively involved in the relief drives in country Victoria, and he particularly thanks the Christian youth groups, so perhaps it was a multi-denominational effort rather than just a Lutheran one. And he also thanks Horsham's residents and the Horsham Times, the paper and the radio, for the publicity for their drive as well. And very interestingly, he makes mention of letters. He writes, "Sheaves of letters that are coming to hand from recipients confess that words fail them to adequately express their joy at receiving such practical evidence of Christian sympathy, especially from residents in so far distant a country and with which their nation had actually been in conflict. They further admit that the experience goes far to alleviate their chronic despondency and to awaken fresh hopes regarding the future." This is certainly a sentiment which we heard echoed in Hildegard Becker's beautiful letter to Lorchen Miller, and it comes across in most of the letters. Indeed, that chronic despondency and the conditions that were causing it is something which is well explained throughout these letters. One of the things that astonished me was how much detail they provide on the conditions of everyday life in post-war Germany, how much they wanted to describe and communicate it, even to people they'd never met or barely knew. They described the rationing in exact detail, the cramped living conditions, the refugees flooding in from the east, and the fact that it's impossible to buy anything. Everything has to be bartered for or got on the black market. And you can get a fair bit more of that context all packed into another letter, my favourite letter as it happens, by a man called Heinrich Kellermann, written from Lintorf in Hanover, a little village near Osnabrück. It was written on the 8th of June, 1947, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but that was actually the day that our Lois Zweck was born. So how about that? I'll read you some passages from it. I may shorten it a little bit for time. "Most esteemed and dear family of C.G. Miller." I think he got that wrong. It was E.G. Miller, but anyway. "Please do not take offence that we have only just now come to express to you our thanks for the parcel you sent to us. When the parcel arrived here, I was at that very time in hospital. It was right around Easter time. My dear wife had an accident unloading wood, and our son had a tooth abscess and was overcome with pain, so that at first it seemed I alone would remain healthy over Easter. On top of all our cares, however, during the night on the Saturday before Easter Sunday, I began to have intense abdominal pains, so we consulted a doctor. Fortunately, it turned out to be no serious illness. It was probably just a little kidney stone. But throughout all of these illnesses, the letter of thanks was put aside. So for this reason, we ask you again to excuse us. For the love you have shown us by sending your parcel, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and we pray to our dear Lord that he would most richly reward you and bless you. If you could see what a joy it is every time a relief parcel arrives from our dear brothers in the faith in Australia and America, then you would rejoice with us yourselves. The need in Germany is immense. There is a shortage of everything, of bread, fat, potatoes, and all other foodstuffs, then of clothing and footwear and all other things. And yet, we would never once have thought to beg our dear brothers in the faith over there for help. Despite this, our dear Lord has made the hearts of our fellow Christians in America and Australia willing to support us of their own accord. And for this love and generosity, we offer our heartfelt thanks over and over again. The destroyed cities and towns present an exceedingly bleak picture. Then there are so many displaced people from the east of Germany, especially in the British zone and the American zone, all crammed together, cheek by jowl, so that often up to 4 people must cook and sleep in the same room. With all this overcrowding, naturally a great shortage of everyday necessities prevails. If one walks through the city, one sees emaciated people that one barely recognizes. And when one then surveys the destroyed houses, one can become filled with despair. And yet, we must always bear in mind that our Almighty God and Father takes pity on our poverty-stricken German people and sends us aid. We Christians have indeed a most wonderful solace, that particular hope that after this earthly life, a better life will be given to us in heaven above. Because of this, we want to be ever thankful to Him that He lets His word be proclaimed to us every Sunday, and that we experience every day as His dear children, through prayer and in firm faith in Him. And so we always look forward to Sunday, when we can still go to church unhindered and hear the Word of God. We have now had our dear little church repainted, so that it has become a real little jewellery box from the outside as well. And God willing, we'll get our organ in a fortnight, with which we will be able to accompany our beautiful songs to the glory of God. We want to dedicate the organ on the 13th of June and combine the organ consecration with a mission festival. So even in these gloomy times, we always have opportunities to rejoice from the heart, and such a joy can the world with all its delights never give. If I now tell you a few personal details about our family life, perhaps you will get to know us a little. We are 3 people in our household: my dear wife, 1 son, and me. We have a little metal workshop with a trade in bicycle and repair facilities for motorbikes as well. We also have a shop with hardware, electronics, and radio equipment. Unfortunately, opportunities for purchasing goods are exceedingly limited. One can only really acquire wares these days by bartering in exchange for groceries. And of course, with the tiny size of the rations, this is nearly impossible. So one encounters difficulties everywhere, and yet we must not and will not let our courage sink, but rather go about our work cheerfully at all times. Unfortunately, I myself am somewhat hampered by an injury, so that I can no longer work the way that I really still should at my age of 49 years. Throughout almost the entire war, I was a soldier, and I even had to go to Russia in 1944. Then I was involved in the absolutely frightful retreat, and in March 1945, I was badly injured by a bullet fracture in the lower leg and captured by the Russians. After 6 months, I was then discharged home as an invalid. Now, however, I am, by the grace of God, so far recovered that I can return to working in my shop again. The greatest and hardest share of the work is carried out by our son. So we are at all times thankful from our hearts that the dear Lord brought us all back together again, and that we can share together in all our joys and sorrows. Now, you will also be glad to know what was in the parcel and whether everything arrived whole. A large tin with boiled down apple pieces, a tin of plum pudding, and a tin of dried milk powder. Over all these things we have heartily rejoiced, and we give you once again our most earnest thanks. With brotherly Christian greetings, we remain your family of Heinrich Kellerman. And there's a P.S. We think we are right in assuming that you are the dear parents-in-law of Mrs. Eleonora Miller, née Weber, and so we would be extremely glad if you could pass on our heartfelt greetings there. Perhaps one day, at a later opportunity, we could send you a family picture of us. At the moment, we have only one picture, in which my son and myself appear as soldiers, and I do not know whether we are allowed to send this overseas. And so there's so much fascinating historical detail in this letter, which is why it's one of my favourites. He's so descriptive about every aspect of everyday life. But 2 of the things I'd like to draw out again. Firstly, that very interesting little detail about the possible censorship of the post at that time. He didn't know whether he could send pictures in which he and his son were in uniform. We found that very interesting. But also just the way that he expresses his gratitude for the fact that every day he can experience his life as one of God's dear children through prayer and in faith, and particularly how much he looks forward to going to church. He elaborated in a second letter in February 1948 that this fervent appreciation for being able to worship freely actually came as a result of his time as a prisoner of war in Russia, where he wouldn't have been able to go to church. He probably wouldn't have had a Bible or anything that he was able to use, and he was also severely injured at the time. And I'll just point out as well, every time you hear fellow Christians throughout that letter, it was that same German word as before, Glaubensbrüder. He even ends with Glaubensbrüderliche Grüßen, faith brotherly greetings, you could say. And I'll just take a quick opportunity here, because I'm sure you folk are more historically minded, of pointing out that this sharing their faith is perhaps even a little bit more specific than what you're thinking. They weren't just sending parcels to fellow Christians, but Warrayure, as I've sort of hinted before, was an Elka congregation from the Elka Synod. And Elka's relief efforts focused quite strongly on sending parcels to their sister churches in Europe, which were the Free Churches in Germany, the Free Church in Saxony, as well as in some other states, and also to the small community of Lutherans in London. And indeed, one of those parcel recipients, a member of the Free Church in Saxony, was a young man called Hans Heinrich Hamburg, then 19 years old. He actually went on to become a pastor in the Zelk, the independent church in Germany, ordained in Wittingen in 1956. And I mention him particularly, and the fact that he was a pastor in the Zelk, because this is how I came across him on the internet, by Googling his name to check if I had transcribed his surname correctly. I came across some articles about his ordination anniversary and his 90th birthday. And by getting in touch with the Zelk Church in Germany, I was able to get his email address, and I was actually able to email him in German, which I got Lois to check for me to make sure that it was intelligible. He did get back to me, which was very exciting. We can forgive him for the fact that he didn't remember all that much about the letters. He's had a lot happen in his life since then, and he very much wanted to tell me more about his family, his children and his grandchildren, and his one great-grandchild. But I thought that was exceptionally exciting to be able to actually get in touch with one of the people who received these parcels and sort of start to make that connection again, and I hope it was interesting for him as well. So, I'm going to share 3 more stories, though we'll see how we're going for time. If people want me to wrap up a bit sooner, just start waving your hands or something, because it is hot in here. I'm going to share 3 more stories, and I think these are all particularly interesting ones, and they really give you a sense of some of those key aspects. Now, is this the right thing? If we just go back a couple slides, actually. One forward. One more forward, sorry. Yep, this one. This is the correct one. So, I'm going to tell you about a woman called Magdalena Benavis and read out her letter for you. And I think this letter really shows you the amount of love and compassion and care which the Millers put into their parcels, and with the help of the Warrayure Women's Guild. Hanover, 9th of January, 1948. Most esteemed and dear Mrs. Miller, on the 7th of this month, namely yesterday, we were delighted to receive your beautiful parcel, which was addressed to my mother, Mrs. Emma Benavis. My mother is ill, however, and so I have taken it upon myself to thank you with my whole heart. The parcel has come undamaged into our hands. Indeed, it was packed with such love and careful precision. I cannot exactly make out the postmark. It is 15th August or 15th October 1947. Perhaps the parcel was meant to arrive at Christmas. Thus, yesterday, it was Christmas again. Because I'm a working woman, we only opened the parcel in the evening. You can well imagine how delighted and surprised we were. Your choice of gifts was so all-encompassing. You even thought of hairpins. Most especially, my mother rejoiced over the warm slippers. With the fur soles, they are so extremely snug. When my mother sits still in her rocking chair, she always gets such cold feet because her blood does not circulate properly. But this, I am sure, will make a great difference. How precious the beef dripping, the wool, the thread, and the soap powder are. You could barely imagine. We have already tried the biscuits shortbread. They taste wonderful. I am sure you must have baked those yourself. While unpacking, we marvelled again and again at how carefully each individual item had been packed. The little sewn bundles, then the tape on the tins. It is now the 4th time within a year that such a beautiful and nourishing greeting has come to us from Australia. Mrs. Lorchen in Melbourne has given out our address there. Mrs. Miller and I played together as children, and we've lived for some 38 years in the house in which she grew up. Indeed, are you related to Mrs. Miller, as you go by the same name? Very briefly now, I would like to tell you a little something about our family, so that you can fashion yourself a little picture. I live with my 70-year-old mother, who has suffered from stomach complaints for many years and has been largely confined to bed since September. Other than that, a sister of my mother lives with us, whose husband died several years ago and whose only son fell in battle. Because I am employed as a bookseller, she looks after the household. I wonder whether you have any children, whether you have a large or a small family. Hopefully you received this letter. Sadly, my schoolgirl English did not stretch to writing you a letter in English. Perhaps you have a good command of the German language and will be able to read it. Although 9 days of the new year have already gone by, I wish you God's richest blessings for the year of 1948. How lovely it would be if we could also give you a little joy. My mother, my aunt and I thank you once more for all the love which you have shown us through this parcel, and send you our most heartfelt greetings. Your thankful Magdalena Binavis. And so, my second story takes place in a little village called Barven, just north of Hermannsburg, the town in Germany from which our Hermannsburg mission takes its name. You can see Miss Betty Miller, closer to the age she would have been at the time of these parcels, at 18 years old, on the far left there. And she sent a parcel, apparently under her own name, to a Mrs. Erna Wiesner in February 1948. And she received the following response a few months later. Miss Betty Miller, I was exceedingly happy to receive your Christmas parcel today. I thank you most heartily for your lovely donation, and the same to the Women's Guild. We couldn't unpack everything that was in there fast enough, then try it on. Everything fits like it was made to measure. I put on the beautiful cardigan straight away, because I have nothing, only what I had on. The cocoa tasted divine. I have just made some for my children, because here one can get nothing like it. Again, many, many thanks for everything, to you and to the Women's Guild. I have a huge favour to ask of you. Please do not think me impolite for expressing this wish, but I find myself in truly great distress. The children have nothing to wear. There are shortages everywhere. They have no stockings, only little ankle socks, so they wear long trousers, which are now in such terrible shape that I can barely patch them anymore. They have a long walk to school, and they really should be dressed warmly. So I beg you most earnestly, if it would be possible, to ask the ladies of the Women's Guild whether anyone has a pair of trousers or a bit of old material so I could sew some. The children are 13 and 9 years old, both girls. Now I will end here in the hope that you will not forget us. Your thankful Erna Wiesner. And I imagine that also enclosed in the same envelope, as you can see up on the slide here, was this little note. To the dear ladies who donated, I, Sigrid, and my sister Gisela also want to thank you for the lovely things. The cocoa tasted so good. It has been so long since we last got to drink any. Food is short here, and sometimes Mum can't get enough for us. Please, please, please do not forget us. Things are hard for Mum, prisoner by the Russians. Many thanks also to the ladies of the Women's Guild, your Sigrid and Gisela. But that wasn't the last letter which Betty Miller received in the post in that particular batch. Arriving probably at the same time was this. Miss Betty Miller, please permit me to direct the following lines to you. My sister-in-law, Mrs. Wiesner, received such a generous parcel. We are refugees from Breslau, which has become part of Poland, and I have 3 children, 2 boys, aged 13 and 14, and a girl of 11 years. We experienced great hardship under the Russians during our time as refugees. We were without a roof over our heads for 6 months and wandered from country road to country road until I no longer knew what to do. Then I decided to walk to the west. We arrived here completely undernourished. I did, however, find my husband again. We have been living here now for 2 years, but unfortunately, we cannot find a home. Nutrition has also become very bad. There is nothing to be had here. One does not know how one can reasonably clothe one's children and get them enough to eat. But this is all we still have left, and we want to keep them healthy. A few days ago, I had a nervous breakdown, but I still want very much to be spared for my children. I would be so incredibly grateful to you if you or one of your dear acquaintances could spare something of clothing and foodstuffs. Great distress unfortunately forces one into such begging letters, and I hope that I do not appear presumptuous. I would also be so very grateful to you if you could send me a few lines with the parcel. Hopefully this will reach you. Offering most heartfelt greetings and wishing you a joyful and healthy new year, although unknown to you, Mrs. Lottie Hubner. And she concludes her letter by putting her full address at the bottom, which is actually the same address as her sister-in-law, Mrs. Pfitzner. So it appears that she and her husband and children were staying there as they couldn't get a house of their own. So did Miss Betty Miller ever answer Lottie Hubner's request and send her a parcel? We don't know for sure because there aren't any further letters from her, but I think we can assume that she did, because if we go to the next slide here, 7 or 8 months later, another letter arrived for Betty Miller, this time from Gummersbach, which you can see on the map here is a fair way away. It's 240 kilometres from Hanover and over 300 kilometres from Barben. 8th of August 1948. Most esteemed Miss Miller, you will surely be astonished to receive a letter from me. I received your treasured address from my friends in Barben, who you some time ago helped out of the greatest distress. I beg your leave to make a polite inquiry as to whether it would perhaps be possible for you to one day send such a parcel to me and my family. We would be so exceedingly grateful to you. Please excuse me for making this request, but our need here is truly great. My wife and I are 39 years of age. We have 2 boys, aged 5 and 10, and it is precisely the children who cause us such great concern. We wish very much that we could help them ourselves, but unfortunately, we just aren't able to. You have surely heard and read enough already about the state of things here in Germany. In the hope that I have made no vain request and that my letter will find you in the best of health, I sign myself, most respectfully, your Heinz Roseler and family. I thought this little group of 4 letters makes a particularly striking and moving story, most particularly because of the humility and vulnerability that the writers betray by writing these requests. Just think what it would take to make Germans write letters like that to total strangers. And just think what it would cost them, what it would cost any parent to admit, as Heinz Roseler does, that he simply isn't capable of caring for his children by himself, of giving them clothes and enough to eat. It really brings across the severity of the situation, and also, I would say, it sort of brings across the extent to which they felt connected to these people by the knowledge of their shared faith, that they felt comfortable to make these requests. How is everybody going? Shall I conclude soon, or shall I give you a few more stories? Keep going? Okay. So, I want to end off now by sharing with you some of the letters from 2 different women called Paula Thiers and Hildegard Klage. I have a bit of a theory about them, which you'll probably pick up from context as we go. Paula is actually the most frequent correspondent of the Millers. There are 4 separate letters from her, ranging the whole time span of the Millers' relief efforts. These letters were actually translated by a new member of our volunteer transcription and translation team at the Archives, Heather Pfitzner, who's here tonight. So thank you very much for your work, Heather, and everyone will, I'm sure, appreciate your beautiful translations that you've done. From Paula's previous letter, we know that her husband, or from her previous letters, we know that her husband is a tailor and that he returned from Russian captivity in August 1947. And his return brought all the old customers who'd been waiting for him coming back to the shop to get work done and support the business. It seems as though perhaps this helped the Thies family be in slightly better circumstances than some of the more desperate people we've heard from. But nevertheless, the parcels were still very much appreciated. So I'm going to read you the third of Paula's letters, which she wrote from the town she lived in, Melle, on the 25th of December, 1948, Christmas Day. Dear friends, today, on the evening of Christmas Day, I wanted to think of you and thank you sincerely for the thoughtful Christmas parcel, which we received 8 days ago. There were, again, many lovely things inside. The jam tasted excellent. We plan to eat the frankfurters on New Year's Eve with potato salad. We'll add the bacon to the kale, as we have no lard to put in with that. The soap is very good. We only get a small 50-gram piece of soap per month. From the jacket, I will be able to make a nice dress for Helga. So again, many thanks for the lovely goods. Now Christmas Day is over. It is already 11 p.m. and the children are all in bed, although they were allowed to stay up until 10 p.m. this evening. On Christmas Eve, it was a joy to see how happy they were with their presents. It was very lively at our place, as all the children in the house wanted to show each other their presents at the same time. Tomorrow they will go to church, to a Christmas celebration there. The days before Christmas, we had a lot to do in the shop and in the tailoring business. We are still short of stock. There are many more people here now than before the war, and most of them have had nothing new to wear for years. And then there are the many refugees who barely have any clothes to wear. My husband drives out shopping most weeks. Otherwise, too little gets posted, and he has to go and fetch more. There are plenty of American goods, much of which is good, but there are many inferior products also. We have had pajamas just recently, quite nice new things, but so big that two can fit inside them. I hope you had a good Christmas over there. It is sure to be warm now at your place. We are having a very mild winter, and I hope it won't become severe. Our children are on school holidays till the 7th of January. They are wishing it would snow so that they can go sledding and tobogganing. Otherwise, the holidays are always too boring. Today, our Ruth went to see our mother. She is feeling a lot better and hopes to soon be discharged from the establishment. It costs a lot of money, 4 marks daily, which is 120 marks per month. There is nothing more important than good health, even when one has to work extra hard for it. Last week, we had a tragic accident within our extended family. Our cousin was run over by an English truck with a German driver and was killed on the spot. His funeral was the day before Christmas. Lorchen recently wrote us a long letter about Hildegard's confirmation. A pity that we couldn't be there for it. As one gets older, one thinks of just how far away it is and how one would so like to see each other. But how can it be? It is all in God's hand. Now I would like to finish off and say thanks again for everything. On behalf of everyone here, I wish you all the best for the new year, God's blessings and good health. From Paula Thies. Meanwhile, in Hanover, a couple of weeks earlier, a woman called Hildegard Klager in Hanover wrote the following letter to the Miller family. And I think this makes it fairly clear how she fits in if you pay attention. On the 3rd of December 1948. Dear Aunt Sophie and Uncle Ernst, firstly, you have our most hearty thanks for your lovely letter at the celebration of our father. It gave him so much joy, because he cannot answer it himself, I must do it for him. More than anything, however, we want firstly to wish you an extremely merry and blessed Christmas and a happy New Year, and most especially good health, for that is really the most important thing. Our father is relatively well. On some days he feels good, and on other days it's absolutely terrible. It makes one so miserable when there is nothing you can do to help. Lorchen wrote to us already about the confirmation. It must have been absolutely lovely. I am still waiting for my husband. One always keeps up hope that he might still be released before Christmas after all. It has been almost 5 years since we have seen each other. One really wishes to someday be together again. I shall conclude now for today, in the hope that this letter will find you in the best of health. Many thanks for the parcel already on its way. I will write as soon as it's here. And indeed she did, because we catch up with her about 2 months later, on the 30th of January 1949. Dear Aunt and Uncle, our father sends his very heartfelt thanks for the wonderful parcel from the 28th of November. Unfortunately, Father is a bit under the weather. He has been lying in bed again since yesterday. He has quite a painful bladder problem. Tomorrow the doctor will come again. Hopefully it will settle down and get better. He is certainly a very uncomplaining patient and is never discontented, and that makes it much easier to care for him. Our mother is also doing better, and we want to hope that she will make a full recovery soon. Next week, I intend to go to Melle with my youngest, and then at the same time visit my mother in Osnabrück and hear what the doctor says. A cousin of mine will stay here over that time and care for Father and Dieter, because Dieter cannot come with. He has to go to school. I had always hoped to have my husband here before Christmas, but all my waiting was again in vain. Who knows when they will be released? One would very much like, however, to get to have something of one's marriage. For 5 years, we have not seen each other at all. It is a long time, and our Lutz only knows him from pictures. But there's nothing to be done. We will just keep waiting, as difficult as it is. We haven't heard from Lorchen either for a long time. I am sure she has a lot to do, and just never quite gets round to it. I wrote to her today as well. One is always happy when one has caught up on all one's correspondence. Only Linda Meebus is still waiting for an answer from me. Please give her my heartfelt greetings. I will write to her soon. I have not forgotten her. Now to you, dear ones, the most heartfelt greetings and all the best. I hope this letter finds you well. Your Hildegard, Father, Dieter, and Lutz. P.S. Hopefully you can read my handwriting, but my hand is sore from so much writing, and it isn't coming out quite so neatly anymore. Now, unfortunately, there aren't any more letters from Hildegard, and so just like Dorothea Rieken's son and Anna Wiesner's husband, we don't get to find out whether they ever did get back from Russia. The last big waves of German POWs released from Russia returned as late as 1953 and 1956. So there is still some hope for them that they returned. And so, as you've probably guessed, my theory regarding Hildegard Klage and Paula Thies is that they were sisters. And I think that possibly, along with the Ruth mentioned in Paula's letters, that they were all sisters of Lorchen Miller. I haven't been able to substantiate this, but I think it seems a pretty good guess from the fact that Hildegard writes to Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Lorchen's parents-in-law, as dear aunt and uncle. And she's also, Hildegard is referred to by friends of hers in another letter who also received a parcel, and they say that her maiden name was Weber, so they do seem to all be related. And obviously, Hildegard and Paula both have a mother who's in an institution near Melle and is recovering there. But now I thought to close off, I would end it on a more hopeful note, and I will read you Paula Thies's final letter, which is the very last letter in the collection. Melle, the 12th of December, 1949. Dear Miller family, you will have been waiting a long time for a letter from us. Today, it's already the third Sunday of Advent. It is Christmas in 14 days' time. I think my letter should arrive before then. I hope you are all well, as we are. Our children are looking forward to Christmas, and who wouldn't be? For us adults, there is a lot of work waiting to be done in these last days. We hope our business thrives in these Christmas weeks. Last year, business was still poor, but this year everything is easily available again. Now it's a scarcity of money that is the problem, because things are too expensive and people need too much, so since for years you couldn't get anything. Today, on the third Sunday of Advent, we have the shop open again. This Sunday is called the Silver Sunday, which means that business was rather good. Next Sunday is called the Golden Sunday, which is meant to be the best before Christmas. There are meant to be actual gold pieces in the till, but there aren't any of them left anymore. Now I want to thank you most sincerely for your generous parcel which arrived mid-November. I had written down a list of the contents, but I have lost the sheet of paper. I wanted to reply straight away. So please, dear people, don't be angry that I am so late with my thanks. But now that everything is available in the shops, I would like to ask you not to send any more parcels. It would be wrong of us to say that we didn't have enough. I want to thank you again today for all the love you have shown us during these hard times. If one walks through the streets nowadays, one sees everything back in the shop windows. There are oranges, lemons, bananas, nuts, almonds, chocolate, just everything one could think of. Then there's the coats, the clothes, the shoes, all of the finest quality. The shop windows glow with bright light. Then often one sees the poverty in between all of this, the many refugees who often don't have a good roof over their heads. In the last weeks, a lot of prisoners have returned from Russia. We hear about it every day on the radio. 5 years of imprisonment is a long time. Currently, there's so much talk about another war, but I don't believe it. Now, dear friends, I will finish off. I send you our heartfelt regards, and most importantly, we wish you all a merry and blessed Christmas, and also a happy new year. Yours, Paula Thiers, with my husband and children, and also Ruth, Karen, and Gertrude. So thank you very much for listening and surviving through the heat today. Before I close off, there's a couple of people I want to say thanks to. Firstly, Heather Pfitzner for her help translating some of those letters. It was very much appreciated. Gave me a couple less that I needed to do. And also to Lois Zweck, who very kindly checked all of my translations that I've read out to you tonight. So you know it wasn't all made up. It's all been verified. And she also gave me some good inroads for my research into the story, suggested a few places I could look. Also, I want to say a particular thanks to Betty Hoof from the Archives of the Tarrington Parish, who sent me an absolute truckload of Warrayure Women's Guild minutes. She sent me the whole 1946 to 1951 in pictures attached to emails, which must have been quite an effort, and they were really instrumental in helping me piece things together. And she also sent me some of those beautiful pictures, including the one of the Women's Guild, so I think they added to things a lot. And also, lastly, I would like to thank Marlene Pietsch, incidentally no relation of mine, but a good friend, and a granddaughter of Mr. and Mrs. E.G. Miller. She was the one who deposited these letters, the tin of letters at the archives in the first place. And she helped me out a lot with the background information on the family and sent me photographs and also sent me a copy of the Miller family history for my better information as well. So that was very much appreciated. So I think thank you very much for coming out on this hot night to hear me talk, and I'll pass you back over to Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethany. A lot of work went into that. Now, my family were involved with that too, and I was just wondering how they actually got in contact with family over there, because it's from Zagerstedt family here to Zagerstedt family in Frankfurt over quite a number of years. And I know the people here sent parcels from Sandleton and Stonefield, which aren't really capital cities, I don't think, over a long period of time, and this family over there was so appreciative of what they received. And once when I was in Germany, I stayed in that home of their son, and he was only a boy at the time at the close of the war. They lived in Frankfurt, and if you know a bit of the World War II history, at the end of the war, the central part of Frankfurt was absolutely bombed flat, apart from the Lutheran cathedral and the small house alongside, which was very close to the proximity of the church. Their family lived 5 kilometres away. And I said, how did you feel with with such a bombardment. Oh, that's 5 kilometres away. But their house rattled so much when all this was going on. And when I was there, their son Rolf and his wife didn't have any children. He gave me a lot of letters that were sent from here over to them. I've got a few, the rest of them in Western Australia, but I haven't had them translated. But it would be in relation to the support that was sent over there in gift parcels of lots of different things. So how they actually made contact initially, I don't know, because in the early writings of the family here, they never mentioned this particular family. So whether they applied or not, I don't know. Yes?
I think this sort of thing went on in South Australia, and I imagine it was probably through the pastors, in congregations. I grew up in the Loxton area, and I was aware and can remember my parents putting a box together with goods. I have no idea of the information, but Pastor Carl Pfitzner was at Loxton at the time, and I know, this sort of thing has happened in other places in South Australia as well, but I don't know how it all came about. But yeah, it's interesting. But I don't have any letters actually.
Okay. Please use the microphone because we're live streaming and so.
Yes, I'm Lorraine, and I came from Laura years ago, and it was through Pastor Warrayure that my parents got names from, and we used to send parcels to a man called Han Geyer in Hanover. And I remember Mum sewing, like we had tins of, it was actually, I think it was sheep's, wasn't it? Dripping anyway, yes. And lots of other things, and it was sewn up in hessian, and you'd write on with indelible pencil on the top, I was fairly young, so I don't remember a lot about that, but I know it was through Pastor Urs. But anyway, in appreciation, this Geyer family sent us a cuckoo clock and also an encyclopedia. That's, they sent it in appreciation. So, yes, it was great. But I can't remember about letters, whether we got letters from them.
Okay, well, it sort of bring back memories of what families did. Any other comments? Yes? Hanover West.
I was going to ask, would the UELCA have done the same thing? No, I'm from the other side. And was there trouble with customs?
Yeah, so I don't know ours certainly were UELCA, but just how it was all coordinated and organised, because they were country farmers. They weren't really big mailmen, I don't think.
So, yes, you might have noticed that I did mostly focus on the ELCA synod, just because that happened to be the synod that the Millers belonged to. I did have a bit of a glance through the Lutheran Herald, which is the UELCA version of the Australian Lutheran, basically. And I came across, there was definitely an organised relief effort in the UELCA as well. But I didn't have time to research that. To be honest, I didn't research that much of the church department side of things in general. But there's articles in every issue of the Australian Lutheran, and I'm sure there would be in the UELCA paper, the Lutheran Herald as well. So there's sort of some of the questions you're asking there, and people asking, how did all of this come together, and how did people get in touch with addresses and so on. That's really all another story. That's the story of the church department kind of relief and what they did. So maybe a talk for another time.
Thanks, Bethany. Dr. Greg Lockwood.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks very much, Bethany. I recall Dr. Morris Schild in the Fritcher oration, I think it was, and he spoke about the Emmanuel Seminary and the Haybarts organising through the seminary, or with the support of the seminary community, sending parcels to the Zasser family back in Germany.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, on behalf of all of us here tonight, thank you most sincerely, Bethany, for your efforts in preparing all this and translating work beforehand, and you're taking a personal interest in this whole topic. And I think it's probably opened the Pandora box of recollections that many families had. I'm sure there are many other families within Lutheran circles at that time that were involved in helping with relief effort as well. And I think it just took a bit of time to sort of make the initial shipment get there and be successful. And once that occurred, then I think there was a much bigger wave through Lutheran guilds and also particular families like ours that made that keep going for a number of years. And I've still got some letters at home dated 1950, 1951 in German, but I don't know what they will say. But there was photographs that were sent as well, and this man in Germany who had no children, he gave all that stuff back to me. So a lot of letters from Sandleton come back to South Australia. So once again, thanks Bethany for this very comprehensive talk, and I'm sure we'll be interested to see the report in our FoLA news for that. And over here, I presume this is for you. Okay, so on behalf of all of us, thank you most sincerely. I know it's hot tonight, but don't drink it all at once. So thank you all for coming tonight. It's been a hot night. We've probably got a much better attendance than we thought we might have, and it'll be interesting to see how many more people we had through live streaming that might have tuned in. Sorry? 25 so far, okay. Good, well thank you people at the back there for doing all that work to transmit it. And it's our intention to keep on doing that, and in the past when we've started with live streaming, we know that there's people from all parts of Australia that have tuned in at some stage to tune in. Yes? Dr. Dean Zweck.
Sometimes in February we put out the FoLA journal, and this year, well, it's in the hands of the printer. The guy that does the printing was on leave, so it took a little bit longer. But last night, John Schultz showed me the final mock-up of the journal, and it'll be out next time. Yeah.
Thank you. So I can look forward to seeing the annual FoLA journal in March. So, there's nothing further. Thank you all for coming here tonight, and invite you all to go into the church hall for a bit of supper and a safe trip home. And it's going to be another warm one again tomorrow. And if you want these books, see Helen and the Hermannsburg books. I hope you've all signed in. If you haven't, please do so still. And we'll see you in a month's time when Lyle gives a talk on the Moravian Brethren.